Hello, great souls. Welcome to our Living Yoga Satsang Talk, reflections on Autobiography of a Yogi. Let's take a moment to begin together with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters of self-realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and Paramhansa Yogananda ji, saints of all religions, friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, we humbly bow to you all. Guide us in our time together as we study and reflect upon the sacred book, these powerful teachings of yoga, these tools for spiritual awakening. May we be receptive to what is being offered to us. And through that receptivity, receive thee, thy divine light, thy divine wisdom, thy divine joy, awakening our own divinity. And may we share this light, this joy, this wisdom, this love with all. Om. Peace. Amen. Okay, great souls. So today we're looking at chapter 19, and the title of our chapter is My Master in Calcutta Appears in Sirampur. So I feel like I say this with every chapter, quite a chapter. Every chapter really is. It isn't surprising. In fact, as I was reading through this chapter, I was reminded of something I heard a friend share with me at Ananda Village. I was there one time, and this chapter is really about miraculous spiritual experiences. And what she was saying to me, she was passing on to me something a friend of hers had said, that I'm no longer, let me get this right. I'm no longer surprised, but I'm still amazed. And I just loved that because, as I was just saying, it's not surprising that every chapter of Autobiography of a Yogi is rich and full of so much. It's not surprising. And yet it's still amazing. It is still amazing. There's a freshness to the miraculous power of God. I mean, really, that is the truth. Spiritual miracles, spiritual awakening. It's this interesting dance. It's called in yoga the lila, the play, the divine play of what feels so astounding, and at the same time, there's a quality of rightness and normalcy. And that's especially true as we integrate the awakening, the divine awakening. It is said that self-realization is really a remembering of who we are. It's divine memory of who we are. So as we remember, as we realize our divine self, there's a naturalness to it. So part of what makes it so astounding and amazing is that how it contrasts the material realm and the limitation of the five senses. So here we are in human bodies moving through this material realm, and at the same time, we are more than the physical body. We have a divine reality within us, a soul nature that is in the body, right? But more than the body. So we're in this material realm, and as we encounter this deeper reality, it bumps up against what we understand in a material way. And then as we receive it, welcome it, make room for it, integrate it, that hold of the material realm, the limitation begins to dissolve. It begins to melt away, and we have a new level, a new comfort, a new normal. A new normal. So I think that's a good way to start, because there's a lot of that in this particular chapter. It begins with Yogananda having a conversation with his college roommate, and his college roommate saying, you know, he's kind of intimating that, let me see if I can find, he had an interesting way of saying it, but he's just kind of, let me put it this way, Yogananda recognizes that his roommate could be receptive to the blessing of a guru, and the blessing, the spiritual blessing in particular of Kriya Yoga. So Yogananda says to him, Shri Yukteswar will initiate you into Kriya Yoga, I replied. So this was Yogananda's reply to his roommate, kind of talking about this vacillating between the meaning of life in essence. And he said it calms the dualistic turmoil by a divine inner certainty. So his friend was kind of expressing what's real, what isn't real. You know, sometimes I wonder about this, other times I wonder about that. And Yogananda was saying to him, come meet my guru. He will initiate you into a sacred practice that will calm all of that for you. It will bring you, and now I'm adding some words here, but the message that he's giving his friend is the practice of Kriya and Kriya Yoga will bring you to a place of inner calm and divine certainty. So you won't have to be in this mental place of trying to figure out what is real. You'll know what is real. That's what he's saying. And then the chapter goes on to give an experience of that. So he says, let me take a sip of water. He says, that evening, Dijon accompanied me, his roommate, to the hermitage. In Master's presence, my friend received such spiritual peace that he was soon a constant visitor. And then he goes on to say that they both it became a habit for them to go to the hermitage to see Sri Yukteswar after their studies each day. Dijon and I, he says they were both pursuing the same degree and talks about this habit of walking to the ashram. We would often see Sri Yukteswar standing on his second floor balcony, welcoming our approach with a smile. I just love that image when I read that. I thought, how beautiful to imagine Yogananda as a young man, college student with his friend, walking to the ashram, and there's Sri Yukteswar welcoming them each afternoon. So then it says, one afternoon, a young hermitage resident met Dijon and me at the door with disappointing news. Master is not here. He was summoned to Calcutta by an urgent note. The following day, I received a postcard from my guru, Yogananda says. I shall leave Calcutta Wednesday morning, he had handwritten on this note. You and Dijon meet the 9 o'clock train at Serampore station. So then this goes on. About 8:30 on Wednesday morning, a telepathic message from Sri Yukteswar flashed incessantly to my mind. I am delayed. Do not meet the 9 o'clock train. So then Yogananda explains this to his roommate. Sri Yukteswar came to me, right? I felt a telepathic message that he won't be there. So we shouldn't go. And his friend completely dismisses him. And he has this statement, you and your intuition, he says with scorn. And, and so the friend leaves and goes to the train. He said, I prefer to follow, the guru's written message than your intuition. And Yogananda said that he calmly seated himself. He didn't go. His friend, oh, you and your intuition, goes off with scorn. And Yogananda just sat calmly, trusting the guidance he received. And that's, it harkens back to what he was saying to his roommate, is that you will develop through the practice of Kriya Yoga a divine certainty, and you'll know how to trust guidance. You'll know how to receive it, and you will know how to trust it. And that's what's happening here. So his friend leaves him, and Yogananda sits there, and then he notices the light in the window. He kind of positions himself to be closer to the morning light. And then he describes a miraculous scene. As the room was rather dark, I moved nearer to the window overlooking the street. The scant sunlight suddenly increased to an intense brilliancy, in which the iron-barred window completely vanished. Against this dazzling background appeared the clearly materialized figure of Sri Yukteswar. Bewildered to the point of shock, I rose from my chair and knelt before him. And then he goes on to describe that Sri Yukteswar was literally there in physical form. He can feel his sandals that he was very familiar with, the robe that Sri Yukteswar was wearing, the ochre robe, brushed against him. He could feel that. Let's see. Too much astonished to utter a word, I stood up and gazed at him questioningly. So here, Yogananda is showing us that he had a level of divine certainty with intuition, and now he's receiving more spiritual realization. His spiritual awakening is expanding. And with that expansion, it's more than he knows what to do with. He really doesn't quite, he's shocked, that's what he said, right? He's shocked into silence. He can't utter a word. He stands up and looks at him with question, and then Sri Yukteswar speaks to him and says, I was pleased that you got my telepathic message. Master's voice was calm, entirely normal. I have now finished my business in Calcutta and shall arrive in Serampore by the 10 o'clock train. And then Yogananda says, as I stared mutely, Sri Yukteswar went on. This is not an apparition, but my flesh and blood form. I have been divinely commanded to give you this experience, rare to achieve on earth. So he's telling him, you can believe what you are experiencing. This is real. This is real. And it's beautiful that Yogananda is showing us exactly what it can feel like when our consciousness expands to the next level. We are astonished. We are amazed. It can feel more than we know how to take in. Is this really happening? Is this really real? And it's beautiful that he's showing us that, because it can be surprising that you have a certain level of realization, of divine certainty, and then it gets expanded, and you don't have that same certainty at first. It's been my experience that I don't have that at first. I wonder, is this real? Is this really happening? What is happening? What am I experiencing? Right? What is happening here? And to have a spiritual guide to support you is extraordinarily important. And this comes back to something that Swami Kriyananda was asked about the spiritual journey. Do we need a guru? Really, do we need a guru? And his first response to the person asking was, no, you don't need a guru. Unless you want to awaken spiritually. And then it's essential that you have that grace to guide you, that you have someone who can guide you. And the guru does not have to be in physical form, in the body. You could have a relationship with a direct disciple, or a disciple of that direct disciple, a student of that disciple. Someone who is capable of being a channel of that divine grace. And, someone who is capable of that can act as your guide spiritually for the guru. So part of what Swami talks about, part of what is being shared here, is that it's not easy to know if something's real. It's not easy to know. Am I fooling myself? Is this a hallucination? Is this an apparition? Whatever it may be. I mean, it's extraordinary to have something like this. And so Yogananda shares that with us, right? That it's rare to have the physical form of a guru appear to us. There are stories of it happening, of Yogananda after he passed, even while he was still alive, before he left his physical body. People had the experience of him coming to them. So it does happen, right? It has happened in modern times. These experiences, they do happen, but they are rare. Nevertheless, it's been my experience that whenever we are invited to take our next step spiritually, there can be this experience of it being a little more than we feel ready for. And to have someone in your life who can hold your hand, who can witness with you, who can listen with you, who can help you integrate what it is you've experienced and discern for yourself, because ultimately what we're looking for is an inner divine certainty. It isn't that I'm always needing to check everything out with someone outside myself. But as we grow, it's very helpful to have someone to reflect back to us. That feels real. Yes, that feels real, what you experienced. It's been, I said a moment ago, extraordinarily important. I just cannot imagine being balanced and relaxed and grounded and comfortable in my spiritual life without it. I really can't, because that's what it's offered me every time. A sense of grounded, centered, balanced, calm, acceptance and space within myself. Oh, I'm growing. Okay, I'm growing. And then I'm able to do that right next to someone else who has been on their own journey of spiritual awakening, and the fruits of that journey are evident in their life. And when I speak of the fruits, what I mean are the 8 aspects that Yogananda defines of how we can experience God. Love, peace, calmness, wisdom, light, sound, the vibration of Om, power, so a spiritual power to be courageous in life, and joy. Those qualities, there's others, compassion, kindness, sensitivity. There are a lot of fruits to the spiritual life. I look for those in my teachers. I look for them. I don't look for them to be perfect on a human level. I don't look for them to be self-realized as masters. I don't look for that. I don't need that. I follow, personally, I do follow this line of gurus, and I have teachers who are ambassadors for me of them. And I need that. I absolutely need that, and I've needed that really for all of my spiritual life. It's what set things right for me. And I have the experience in my early 20s. I was meditating and praying. As sometimes I've talked about, I have a history of alcohol recovery, addiction. So I was, through that journey of recovery, I was encouraged through the 12 steps to practice prayer and meditation. And as it happened, I had some profound spiritual experiences that were unsettling, and I did not know how to cope with them. I didn't know how to cope with them. They were just as Yogananda described in terms of overwhelming, and I was guided to work with, initially I worked with a nun who was incredibly helpful for me in validating my experience. I met with her weekly, and I would share everything I was experiencing in my awakening. I was awakening, and to a new level of understanding. And she was able, and I needed it, she was able to validate my experience and guide me, to help me to put that awakening into practice with ease, with comfort, with confidence, with a sense of normalcy. Really, God is real, and you are experiencing God. That was the essence of her message. Yes, God is real. And God can come and does come to us in different ways. And she absolutely sensed the validity of my experience. And she was in a role that gave me confidence. And also, I just want to say, she had a nature and a way about her that she was very grounded. She was very stable. She was really committed spiritually in her life, and she had a normalcy about it that was reassuring to me and relaxing to me. So what's happening here, Yogananda is giving us this example with a guru, and for many of us, we are experiencing the kind of the stepped down version, you could say. It's not diminished, it's just where we can work with it. Right? So what Swami said about living with Yogananda is that he said it's natural for all of us to feel like, oh, I'd like to be with the guru when they're in their physical body. And he said, you know, it's demanding. It's demanding to be in the presence of that much energy and wakeful consciousness. It's a lot, and it requires a level of spiritual advancement to tolerate it. So many people spoke of that who were close to Swami, that he had, you know, he was twice the age of most people and had so much more energy and vitality than all of them, right? They were young and vibrant and were just constantly trying to keep up with Swami because he was full of vitality. He just was very advanced spiritually. And he had the capacity to meet each person where they were and not ask them to be where he was. He was very real. He was very grounded, right? Very expanded, very grounded. So the chapter goes on to talk about and to demonstrate that it wasn't just Yogananda's experience where he's hearing Sri Yukteswar validate this is real. It then gets demonstrated to his roommate that it's real. That was a blessing for his roommate as well. His roommate comes back. He's, you know, from the train station, Sri Yukteswar wasn't there, and Yogananda says, don't worry, he'll be there at 10. He grabs his hand and takes him to the train station. And his friend doesn't believe him again. Even though Sri Yukteswar wasn't there, he doesn't believe him again. It's just, he's thinking it's a fantasy. And it gets demonstrated to him, to his astonishment, that in fact it is real. And then he wants to know, well, why didn't I perceive what you perceived? Because Sri Yukteswar tells him, I sent you to the roommate, I sent you the same message. You didn't receive it, but I sent it to you too. You had the same opportunity, and you were not able to receive that opportunity. And Yogananda explained to him, and he could see then for himself, his mind was so restless and agitated. He had not yet developed that deep inner practice of the deep inner communion practice that allows us to be receptive to spiritual awakening, allows us to grow, allows us to take our next step. So here, this chapter is full of guidance for us of what it looks like, that we can and we do along the way have more and more divine certainty of our experience. So in the beginning, there's no restlessness or Yogananda is very comfortable receiving a telepathic message. Nothing in him is overwhelmed by that. He feels it, he receives it, he believes it, he knows it, he calmly sits and waits to receive the next message. The next message comes in a form that's beyond what he was prepared for. And he's expanded in that experience. And I would say that part of what happens for him, and I know because I actually know the story, that meaning his confidence and his divine confidence does increase until he really understands he has his own full awakening. Right? But this is how it happens. And it's helpful for us to see how it happens. I will say this, it's helpful for me. It's very reassuring. I continually am comforted because it's still happening, right? It's still happening. And I'll end with this. I was in a class last night about deepening our meditation practice. And the theme of that class was sitting in the stillness, which is part of what we practice with meditation, that Yogananda taught us that there are techniques. And one of the first techniques we learn, sometimes referred to as baby kriya, is Hong Sa. And what we're taught is that a third of our practice, Hong Sa, is a technique for inner communion, right? For going and finding that peaceful place within of our own soul nature. And the last third of our practice, we practice being in the experience, getting there in the technique, and then being there. And the more that we learn how to do that, the more comfortable and at ease we feel with our own spiritual awakening. Swamiji, I had the great honor of speaking to him directly once, and he talked to me about this very thing. His message was, it's more natural than we imagine, but it's who we are. So he was saying to me, he didn't say deep breath in and out, but that's what I felt in his presence, to relax and to know I'm okay. It was the same topic, spiritual awakening, and how to find comfort and ease with that. And that's the message that I see that really stands out in this chapter today. So as you move through this week, I just invite you to practice the silence, to practice notice where you have already divine inner certainty, and then pay attention to the invitation to expand your awareness, your understanding, your awakening. Okay, great souls. So good to be with you today. Wishing you a beautiful week. Many, many blessings to you.